Welcome back, everyone. This is it, the final and, let's be honest, pretty necessary chapter of our big three-part deep dive into the monumental structural failure that is the Lone Wanderer's disappearance.
It really has been quite the journey, hasn't it? We started out, thinking we were tracking a hero, and we ended up neck deep in the psych profile of a radiation immune, functionally psychopathic demigod who basically saved the entire capital Wasteland and then just vanished. Poof.
Okay, look, if you were just joining us now, seriously, stop. Go back and listen to parts 1 and 2. We are absolutely not spending time recapping the basics again.
Nope, time's too precious.
By now, you should get it. Lone Wanderer, this 19-year-old knight of the Brotherhood, they're the single most effective and, frankly, terrifying human weapon ever cooked up in the Wasteland. And we already proved definitively that the whole going west to become Courier 6 theory, canonically dead. DOA. Thanks, 2277.
Yeah, fail the established timeline on that one, seriously. Robbed us of the greatest Fallout crossover imaginable. But, alright, since that path is completely blocked, we have to face the next question. When a force of nature, like the Lone Wanderer, decides to just, kick rocks, where the hell do they actually go?
And that is exactly our mission for part 3 today.
Yeah.
If they didn't wander west and conveniently get shot in the head, what other monumentally unstable possibilities are left on the table?
We're diving into the 3 most compelling and maybe the most terrifying alternative fates for this demigod who saved DC.
We've got the path of the god space pirate extraordinaire. Then there's the path of the ghost becoming a master of disguise. And finally, the path of the tragic hero betrayal, erasure, the whole depressing 9 yards.
Yeah, this whole deep dive, fundamentally, it's about the so what of having ultimate power, right? What actually happens when one person gets an arsenal, both physical and psychological, that just makes them totally incompatible with the peace they supposedly created.
They basically transcend their own world and maybe decide the society they just saved can, figure its own shit out from now on.
Exactly. Good luck, mortals.
Okay, let's dive in. And we have to start with the one that basically throws the entire Fallout rulebook out the airlock. All right, let's unpack this first one. The Path of the Gods. Yeah. It's outlandish, definitely the most out there, but it hinges entirely on the mothership Zeta acquisition, and you really cannot overstate how much of a game changer that is. It just completely unbalances everything.
Oh, absolutely. It fundamentally shifts the character's entire operational capability. I mean, think about it. Every other Fallout protagonist, the Soul Survivor, the Courier, even the original Vault Dweller, they're all scrounging, right? Dealing with ground-level crap, logistics, scavenging.
Yeah, fixing pipe rifles and worrying about raid roaches.
Exactly. The Lone Wanderer is the only protagonist, canonically, who ends their main story arc in command of a fully functional interstellar vessel. They go from being a kid looking for their dad to, Captain Kirk armed with a power fist and a really bad attitude. It's insane.
We should probably spend a sec on the specifics here, because it's not just some rusty bucket they patched up. The sources are clear. The LW led a full-on mutiny against the Z-Team command structure. They seized complete functional control of this massive alien ship. All the tech, the weapons, everything.
And that's just the ship itself. Let's not forget the little bonus prize they picked up during the Broken Steel expansion.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The Bradley Hercules Orbital Satellite Array. This is the point where the Lone Wanderer stops being just a really scary knight and basically becomes a rogue global superpower.
People tend to gloss over the Bradley Hercules, but it's crucial. This wasn't just like a weather satellite. It was the Enclave's ultimate ace in the hole, a network of orbital platforms capable of raining down these devastating, super precise energy strikes anywhere on the East Coast, basically on command.
So, control over that array means the Lone Wanderer possesses an independent orbital weapon system, the ultimate view button that only they can push.
Combine that with the whole radiation immunity thing they got from the FEV exposure in Project Purity and the alien spacecraft. I mean, the LW is literally untouchable at this point. No force left on Earth can realistically threaten them.
Okay, so let's connect the dots. The logical rationale for leaving Earth. You're standing there, middle of the ruins of DC. You're basically immune to radiation, feral ghouls, whatever. You can call down orbital strikes like ordering pizza, and you have a fully stocked spaceship orbiting overhead, probably with weird alien booze. Why in the living hell would you stick around?
Right. Earth suddenly looks incredibly boring and small. It presents absolutely zero challenge, zero threat after the Enclave is gone. The Brotherhood, yeah, they're getting organized under Maxon eventually, but they can't shoot down an interstellar vessel capable of jumping who knows where. Raiders, super mutants, they're just target practice from orbit.
Their personal power level has literally punched through the damn atmosphere.
Yeah.
The only logical next step for someone called a Wanderer is to just keep going. Outward. Way outward.
Exactly. The ultimate fulfillment of the Wanderer title, just on a scale nobody could have possibly imagined. The LW basically transcended the entire regional, post-apocalyptic sandbox of the Fallout universe. They outgrew the planet.
And this is where the theory gets, let's say, charmingly absurd. Because the sources suggest the LW didn't just, like, fly off solo. They supposedly put together a ragtag crew.
Oh god, the crew. We're potentially talking about Fox, the super mutant intellectual who quotes literature. Maybe Charon, the ghoul bodyguard who just wants contractual clarity. Dog meat, obviously. Maybe even that cyber samurai guy from the simulation. Imagine that bridge crew.
That's not Starfleet, man. That's a galactic traveling circus run by a teenager with anger management issues and access to WMDs.
Yeah.
It really is just the LW wasn't interested in, like, organized exploration or diplomacy. They just grabbed their weirdest friends and went on the ultimate cosmic road trip to get away from all the boring humans. Full space pirate.
Right.
Galactic menace,
Yeah.
probably.
And what's really fascinating, or maybe just funny, is how fan theories try to stitch this space madness back into later games, specifically Fallout 4. It's like this meta-narrative wink, you know?
You're talking about the UFO crash theory, right?
Yeah.
The sources get specific on this one. The idea is that the crashed Zatan scout ship you find near Oberlin Station in Fallout 4,
Yeah.
that wasn't some new invasion attempt.
Nope. The theory flips it. If the Lone Wanderer is tooling around the solar system in Mothership Zeta around that time, maybe that crash wasn't an invasion. Maybe it was just the LW having, like, a cosmic fender bender.
So the Lone Wanderer, the single most efficient killing machine in the history of the Wasteland, is also such a chaotic a-hole pilot that they forgot to check their mirrors between, like, Saturn and Jupiter, clipped a poor Zayden scout, and sent it careening back to Earth for the sole survivor to find a decade later.
That is the ultimate expression of unstable efficacy, isn't it? Their power is so immense, their mere screw-ups become intergalactic incidents that shape events on Earth years later.
It provides this really clean, if completely bonkers, explanation for the LW's total silence during that missing decade, 2277 to 2287. It's kind of hard to send a postcard from the Andromeda Galaxy when you've accidentally started a war with sentient space slugs because they looked at dog meat funny.
The narrative elegance is there, despite the absurdity. It perfectly explains the immediate total radio silence. When you basically become a god, or at least a heavily armed space hobo, the squabbles of the capital wasteland just stop registering. It's the ultimate self-imposed exile.
It also gives a damn good reason why someone like Arthur Maxson later on would be absolutely terrified of the chaos associated with the Lion's Area and anyone connected to it. If your Star Knight literally flew off into space with a super mutant, a death claw, and control over an orbital death ray, yeah, that's a legacy you'd want to bury.
Deep. One hell of a loose end floating around up there.
Absolutely. Okay, wow. Let's try and reel it back in from the cold void of space and plant our feet back on the slightly less irradiated dirt of Earth for the next possibility.
Yeah.
All right, so from potential galactic warlord status, we swing back to Earth for the path of the ghost. This theory is way more grounded, comparatively speaking. It suggests the Lone Wanderer, needing to utterly disappear but maybe not wanting to abandon humanity entirely, adopted this constantly shifting, lying persona, specifically Deacon, the railroad operative from Fallout 4.
And this theory, you know, it gets a lot more traction than the courier idea, mostly because, while it has its own timeline hurdles, which we'll get to, it's not instantly nuked by the calendar. And maybe more importantly, it fits the Lone Wanderer's likely shattered psyche almost perfectly.
Yeah, think about the state they'd be in. We're talking about someone deeply traumatized, unbelievably powerful, but also trying desperately to escape their own impossible legend. That whole saint or monster thing Moira Brown writes about later, it's their reality.
Exactly. You rack up a body count in the thousands before you're even 20, you save the damn world with Project Purity, defeat the Enclave single-handedly, basically, only to get shunned by your childhood home, Vault 101. And then you see the writing on the wall with Maxson's rise in the Brotherhood, this new, rigid, dogmatic authority coming in.
The disillusionment has to be immense. The LW would realize that despite everything they did, despite their incredible ability to just get done, the world they saved, it doesn't actually have a place for them. Not really. They're too independent, too destructive, maybe just too weird and powerful for any organized group to trust.
So self-erasure becomes the ultimate survival strategy. And maybe, just maybe, a way to keep contributing, but from the shadows.
And the Deacon persona, it's the perfect vanishing act, isn't it? A character whose backstory changes every time you talk to him, who lies constantly, even when telling the truth would be easier. The lone wanderer, already a master of stealth, infiltration, sneaking around, becoming the ultimate chameleon, just feels right.
But it's not just psychological projection. There's that one canonical clue, that tiny little nugget in Fallout 4 that makes this theory really compelling. Holds water, you know?
Oh yeah, this is the good stuff. It's
Really?
super specific, tiny detail, but it's delicious. Deacon's idle chatter in Fallout 4, he casually mentions that the water in the capital Wasteland is actually drinkable now.
Just pause on that line for a second. Actually drinkable now. That is a direct, specific reference to the long-term success of Project Purity, the single biggest achievement of the Lone Wanderer's entire miserable young life. Its effect tied so deeply, so personally to their actions.
It's not just like general Wasteland trivia someone might pick up. It feels like proprietary knowledge, lived experience. Who the hell hanging out in the Commonwealth almost a decade later would just casually know that? Or even feel the need to mention it? Unless they were the one who flipped the switch. It's this undeniable little thread connecting Deacon back to DC. Way stronger than just wishful thinking.
Totally agree. It elevates the theory significantly. However, no deep dive is complete without banging our heads against the goddamn timeline again. There's a major chronological conundrum. Railroad terminal entries, the ones you can find in their HQ, strongly suggest Deacon was already active with the railroad before 2277.
Which is the exact same year the Lone Wanderer was still, busy blowing up the Enclave oil rig and purifying the Potomac.
Yeah.
So, on paper, that looks like a theory killer, right? How can they be in two places at once?
This is where we have to stop treating the Lone Wanderer like some regular schmuck and remember their canonical skill set. Which brings us to the counter-argument, the LW as the master hacker.
Right. If the LW is Deacon, they wouldn't just adopt an identity. Someone with their abilities would fabricate its history meticulously.
We know the LW canonically has, maxed out intelligence, science, hacking skills. Remember, this is the person who successfully infiltrated Raven Rock, the Enclave's deepest, most secure command bunker. They didn't just pick a lock. They bypassed complex security systems, maybe even manipulated data.
And Raven Rock wasn't just some shack with a password prompt. It was the heart of the Enclave war machine on the East Coast. Highly secure, deep underground.
Yeah.
The LW got in, did their thing, got out. And let's not forget, they also demonstrated the know-how to interface with and control that Bradley Hercules orbital array. That requires serious tech skills.
So the fan counter argument is pretty straightforward. For someone who can crack Raven Rock and manage orbital weapons, slipping into the railroad's relatively low-tech internal network and altering some terminal logs to backdate Deacon's activity, that's not just plausible, it's probably trivial for them. It's a simple act of digital camouflage.
Okay, but I gotta push back a little here. Doesn't that feel like overkill? Like using a tactical nuke to swat a fly? If the LW has that level of power hacking skills bordering on technomancy, orbital lasers, alien tech, using it just to fudge some dates in a basement computer system for a small, secretive group, it almost feels beneath them, doesn't it?
But see, that's maybe the tragic beauty of this theory. The goal isn't efficiency. The goal is anonymity. Total self-erasure. For the LW, leveraging their god-tier tech skills to meticulously craft a completely untraceable, backdated identity isn't overkill, it's a fundamental defense mechanism. It's about burying the Lone Wanderer so deeply no one can ever dig them up again.
Okay, I see that. It transforms the LW from just a wanderer into the ultimate survivor. Not dead, not aimlessly drifting through space, but consciously choosing to dedicate their unique, chaotic skill set, stealth, combat, tech mastery to a cause. A secretive anti-authority cause like the railroad.
And it's a cause that kind of fits, right? They see the institutional power of the Brotherhood heading in a direction they can't stomach under Maxon, so they throw their lot in with a grassroots organization fighting for synthetic life, the very kind of abomination Maxon's Brotherhood would later hunt down. It's like the LWs continuing the ideological fight they started under Elder Lyons, just completely off the books, in disguise.
That does have a profound narrative elegance to it. It makes the silence, the disappearance, not an accident of geography or physics, but a deliberate psychological choice. An act of sacrifice, maybe? Giving up their identity to keep fighting the good fight, hidden in plain sight.
Yeah.
Deep. Okay, now we need to shift gears. Hard. We're moving away from elaborate survival schemes and into something darker, more grounded, and honestly, statistically, probably the most likely scenario given the politics of the Wasteland. This is the path of the tragic hero. And it doesn't start with a spaceship or a disguise. It starts with the inevitable power shift that pulls the rug out from under the Lone Wanderer.
This really centers on the end of the Lions era and the Brotherhood. The Lone Wanderer's position, their influence, their very safety within the Brotherhood structure, it was all completely dependent on Elder Owen Lyon's leadership, his progressive, humanitarian, somewhat flexible approach. But the sources mention, even during the game, Lyons' health was failing. It was a known issue.
His death was basically inevitable. And we know historically what happened next. The rise of Arthur Maxon. And Maxon isn't just a new boss. He represents a fundamental reset, a hard turn back towards the original Brotherhood doctrine.
Yeah.
He's the descendant of the founder, Roger Maxon, and he brings back that old school, isolationist, technology hoarding, deeply suspicious of outsiders vibe.
And that political earthquake instantly makes the Lone Wanderer a massive problem, a huge ideological liability. Under Maxon's regime, the one we see fully formed in Fallout 4, the LW becomes this ticking time bomb within the Citadel.
Why exactly?
Yeah.
Because the LW represents everything Maxon wants to purge. They're too independent, they don't take orders well, they're way too powerful, bordering on uncontrollable. And they embody that whole humanitarian share the tech with the Wasteland approach, like with Project Purity, which Maxon absolutely despises. Maxon demands rigid, absolute order. The LW is chaos, unstable efficacy personified.
It's just peak Fallout cynicism, isn't it? The most effective hero the East Coast has ever seen, the one who literally saved the region from the Enclave, immediately becomes politically inconvenient, ideologically incompatible with the new management. It just proves that war might not change, but politics sure as hell does, and power always consolidates.
Let's really drill down on how precarious the LW's position was because of their power. This wasn't just some knight who disagreed with the new elder. This is someone with, well, frankly, ridiculous abilities. Radiation immunity, access to insane gear, pre-war military training from the Anchorage simulation. Oh, and maybe knowledge of how to use an orbital death laser and potentially command of an alien mothership.
That Operation Anchorage training is key, I think, to understanding Maxon's potential fear. The LW didn't just do the simulation, they reportedly mastered advanced pre-war tactics and weaponry to a degree probably no one else in the Brotherhood could even comprehend. If the LW decided to actually push back against Maxon's new direction, it wouldn't be a debate, it wouldn't even be a civil war. It'd likely be a very short, brutal political execution, followed by the Lone Wanderer potentially dismantling the entire East Coast Brotherhood single-handedly if they felt like it. This sheer, overwhelming power imbalance, combined with the political tension, it fuels all the dark speculation about what really happened in that missing decade, particularly the theories involving betrayal and manipulation, because that's the only way you could take down someone like the LW. Yeah, there are a few grim possibilities floated in the fan theories and source discussions. One is the sort of heroic but still tragic end. The idea that the LW might have died alongside Sentinel Sarah Lyons. We know Sarah canonically dies sometime between Fallout 3 and 4, often speculated to be during some tough campaign or internal conflict.
So in this scenario, maybe they settle together, fighting side by side against some genuine threat. But then, Maxon could easily spin that narrative, couldn't he? Manipulate the story of their deaths to consolidate his own power? See, the chaos and outreach of the Lions era led to the loss of these great heroes. We must return to the old ways, be strong, be isolated to prevent such tragedies. It justifies his entire regime change.
But then there's the really cynical theory, the one that feels disturbingly plausible in the cutthroat politics of the Wasteland. Straight up political assassination. Maxon and his loyalists would see the LW as this unstoppable, high-profile symbol of the old regime who just wouldn't fall in line. A dangerous loose cannon who couldn't be controlled.
And like we said, a direct confrontation against a radiation-immune knight in T-51B armor who might have orbital strike capability. That's suicide. So if Maxon felt he had to remove the LW, he'd have to use covert means, deception, betrayal. It's the only weapon that reliably works against the demigod.
Some sources even speculate about a really ignominious end. Like maybe they were lured into a trap by someone they trusted. Or perhaps something even darker, like a targeted drug overdose disguised as an accident. Something quick, quiet, deniable. It allows Maxon to remove the obstacle without ever having to face them directly, without risking his own power base in an open fight. It's easier and politically safer to destroy the legend quietly than to defeat the person publicly.
And the silence that follows. The complete lack of information about the LW's fate in later games, that becomes the most damning piece of evidence supporting this tragic path. It speaks to the shame and the political necessity of the Brotherhood actively erasing the lone wanderer from history.
Exactly. If the LW did die in a way that was inconvenient or embarrassing for the Brotherhood, betrayed by their own, killed under questionable circumstances, the new Maxon regime has every single reason to scrub them from the records, to turn the savior of the capital Wasteland into a footnote, a rumor, a ghost.
Maxon needs a clean slate to build his own legend, right? He needs to be the new focal point, the strong leader rebuilding the Brotherhood, the memory of this chaotic, hyper-competent demigod from the previous administration. That has to go. They become the monster, or the tragic failure, whose story implicitly justifies Maxon's iron-fisted control. It's the perfect historical whitewash. Allows Maxon to stride onto the stage in Fallout 4 as the undisputed, rightful leader, untainted by the messy humanitarian ideals of the past. This path is just bleak. It suggests the hero wasn't taken down by the Enclave or super mutants or some external evil. They were destroyed by the very institution they helped save, betrayed from within. So, okay, whether they're out there captaining a starship full of misfits, lurking in the shadows of Boston as a master spy, or lying forgotten in some unmarked grave near the Citadel, the Lone Wanderer's ultimate legacy seems to be one of just profound dissonance, instability, a void where a person used to be.
Yeah, and to really wrap our heads around this, let's circle back to maybe the most concrete piece of meta lore we have about their fate. Those notes from Moira Brown's official game guide, the one supposedly written around 2297. That's nearly 20 years after the LW vanished.
In those notes,
Yeah.
they perfectly capture the complete erosion of the individual, the chaos surrounding their memory. Moira literally writes that people can't even agree on the Lone Wanderer's gender anymore, man or woman, she asks, or their fundamental morality, saint or monster.
It shows that the Lone Wanderer achieved this mythic status that completely overwhelmed the actual human being. Their actions were so consequential, their power so immense, that the legend literally consumed the person. They ceased to be an individual and just became a story. A conflicting, confusing story. It's the ultimate price tag for being the most effective protagonist in the series. You lose yourself to the narrative you created.
Then that ties directly back into the theme of isolation, doesn't it? The sources really hammer this home. The LW never seemed to form solid anchoring relationships. This isn't a character who puts down roots.
Not at all. Think about the companions. Fox, Charon, Cross, Butch, even Dogmeat. They function more like strategic assets, temporary allies, or tools of convenience, rather than deep, meaningful connections. There's always a transactional element.
And the settlements, too. Places like Megaton or Tenpenny Tower. The sources suggest the LW viewed them primarily as, like, stash boxes, safe houses, resource nodes, not homes, not communities they belong to.
Which is why that title, Lone Wanderer, feels so incredibly earned, not just as a cool moniker, but as an inescapable description of their state of being. They were profoundly alone, perhaps because their experiences, their power, their actions made them fundamentally alien to everyone else around them. They saved the goddamn region, wiped out the Enclave, fixed the water. But the cost was everything personal. Connection, stability, normalcy. Isolation wasn't just a consequence, it was maybe the only reward left.
Which brings us right to the core paradox of the Lone Wanderer's entire existence, I think.
Yeah.
They are, without question, the most effective, the most overpowered, the most consequential protagonist in the entire Fallout series. Their ability to get things done, their maximal utility, is just off the charts.
Absolutely undeniable, but, and this is the huge but, the path they took to achieve what we generally call good outcomes, activating Project Purity, destroying the Enclave threat, it required this staggering level of relentless, cold-blooded violence, this inherent psychological instability. It forged them into something that was ultimately unfit for the very peace they created. They became the living embodiment of the war they fought, the war they mastered.
And that leads us back to the really profound question that kind of underpins all three of these theories we've talked about. The question the sources keep poking at. Was their decision to disappear, whether it was blasting off into space, melting into the persona of Deacon, or succumbing to betrayal and death, was it ultimately an act of selfless wandering? Like protecting the fragile, recovering society from their own potentially destructive influence?
Or was it something sadder? Was it the broken, maybe subconscious realization that they were simply too powerful, too damaged, too inherently chaotic to ever actually be allowed to settle down, to live among the ordinary mortals they saved? They could fix the Wasteland's water supply, but they couldn't fix themselves.
It's the ultimate, most fed-up version of the "war never changes" tagline, isn't it? And told through the lens of one incredibly powerful, incredibly unstable teenager. The hero's greatest tragedy wasn't the horrors they faced, but the sheer magnitude of the violence and power they mastered, which ultimately exiled them from any kind of normal life, prevented them from ever truly finding a home.
And that right there is why the Lone Wanderer's story, or lack thereof, remains probably the most compelling and definitely the most unresolved puzzle in the entire Fallout saga. It's just a fantastic, chaotic, ultimately unknowable mess. #OutR.
Well, folks, we did it. We have officially slammed the book shut on this absolutely monumental 3-part deep dive into the glorious shot show that is the Lone Wanderer's legacy. Seriously, thank you for sticking with us through all of this. It was
a lot. It really was. And while we can definitively say that East Coast owes its continued irradiated existence to this chaotic powerhouse, their actual fate, still completely wide open. It's pure headcanon territory from here on out. Whether you like your wanderer exploring distant galaxies, whispering secrets in Boston back alleys, or feeding the raid roaches beneath the Citadel thanks to a scheming pretty boy elder, it's all on the table.
Okay, but before we go, final provocative thought.
Yeah.
Something for you to chew on. We spent a ton of time this series dissecting how the Lone Wanderer couldn't have gone west, right?
Yeah.
For those pesky bullshit calendar dates in 2277 messing up the Courier 6 theory.
Right. Damn you, timelines.
But just consider this for a second. What if?
Yeah.
What if the LW had somehow fixed their timeline issue? What if they used those master hacker schools we talked about, fabricated their history so perfectly, they wiped the slate completely clean, and then decided, you know what? FTC. I need a new adventure, something bigger. What kind of utterly fed-up power vacuum situation would they be walking into out west around that time?
Out west, you say? Well, a new adventure like that. It would probably need a truly vast, morally gray sandbox to play in. Maybe. Like a huge desert, filled with warring factions, perhaps. Maybe centered around some kind of massive, strategically vital dam that holds the key to the whole region's future. And I don't know, maybe there's a charismatic guy in a really sharp checkered suit pulling strings behind the scenes, playing chess with everyone's lives.
Indeed. Interesting possibilities out west. Now that we're officially done dissecting DC's resident demigod, maybe, just maybe, it's about time we started thinking about following that legendary path west ourselves. Perhaps check in on a certain courier who had a rather memorable headache.
We'll see.
We'll see you soon for the next deep dive. Keep digging.